As mentioned in the previous video, in this video we are going to be creating the horizontal or the flat version of this postcard, and we are going to be using that version in a lot of places on our project. An example is the featured article. It is being displayed in a flat version, and if you go to the topics page, you will notice that we are using these flat cards or the flat article card to list the articles on this page. And in order to design the flat version, since both versions of the card contain basically the same information, for example, image, title, topic, time, and so on, we are not going to be designing this flat card from scratch. We are simply going to switch from displaying it in the vertical direction to displaying it in a horizontal direction. So we will basically add an extra class to a card if we want it to display as a flat card. So for example, here, if we want this card to display in the flat direction, we'll just add a class of flat card to the HTML for this card, and it will start displaying horizontally like this one. And of course, we are going to define a few styles on that extra class to make sure that it can modify this card to be displaying horizontally. Now, there is one modification I want us to do to the CSS that we have already defined for this tall card. So it's not going to change anything. It's just going to display the card using flex. So let us go back to our CSS. As you can see here, we are giving the height of 480 pixels to the card, and then we are splitting that height among the two main descendants of the postcard, that is the image and the post info section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to display this postcard using flex, and I'll make sure I set the flex direction to column because we want it to continue displaying vertically as it is doing right now. Okay, and then instead of displaying like I mentioned in a previous video, when you are displaying the parent using flex, it is recommended to use the flex basis property instead of the height and the width. Alright, so here instead of using height, we are going to use flex basis, and the value remains the same. And also on the post info section, instead of using a height, we'll use the flex basis. Now you can read up more about the flex basis, but basically if the parent component is being displayed in the column direction, that is vertically, then the flex basis property is going to behave the same as the height. But if the flex direction were to be row, then flex basis will behave as a width. Alright, so in this case it is behaving as a height. That is why we are able to replace the height property with it. Alright, and I think I am comfortable to convert these values to their equivalents in percentages. First of all, if you refresh, you're not going to notice any changes. But if you convert these values to percentages, you will notice that 180 pixels is about 38% of the entire height. So we'll give it a value or a flex basis of 38% for the image wrapper, and then for the post info we'll give it the remaining 62%. So all of that will sum up to 100%, and this is going to be basically the same as it was before. Okay, the reason I was using flex to display the card was so that when we add the extra class to make it a flat card, it's going to be easier to just switch from using the column display to the row display. Alright, so that's all the modification I wanted to do on the vertical card. Now we can proceed to add the new class that's going to modify this card to look like a flat card. Now, in order to do that, we will go to the HTML for this card, and we will simply add a class of flat card. And then back in our CSS, just under the section, the styling section for postcard, we are going to add another comment to indicate that we are styling now for the flat card. And we will make sure we derive from the styles we already have for the postcard. So we are going to say for any postcard that has a class of flat card, first of all, we are going to change the height and the width, because the flat card is not going to be as tall as the vertical card. So we will give it now a height of 300 pixels instead of 480. And then for the width, we are just going to give it a width of 100% so that it can occupy the entire space that is available to it, like we see here. Okay, so this is the page contents and it is occupying the entire width. For places like this, the featured card, when we get to that place, we can reduce the width for that particular card. But by default, let the width be 100%. Okay, so now the postcard is already being displayed using flex. So we're just going to set the flex direction to row, because it was displaying using column before, like I just did a few minutes ago. So let us refresh. And now it is displaying in a flat direction. And just like that, we already have our flat card. Of course, it looks very much stretched now, and that's because the container itself is a little bit too wide. If you give it a width of, let's say, 800 pixels, you're going to notice that our card is beginning to take shape. But now, instead of giving the image part a height, or rather a width of only 38 pixels, sorry, 38%, and the info 68%, I'm going to give both of them a width of 50%. Let me just copy from up here. So any postcard that has a class of flat card, we'll select the image wrapper as well as the post info, and we'll give flex basis of 50%. So the image should have a width of 50% and the post info should have a width of 50% also. And now our flat card looks perfect. And this just proves the point I explained earlier, that whenever you are displaying it using row, flex basis will behave as the width. That is why the 50% acted as the width for these two parts of the card. Meanwhile, up here, when we were displaying it as column, these two values were being used as the height. So this looks good, but we need to make it responsive to smaller screen sizes. Yeah. Okay. So I will first of all remove the fixed height I gave to the page container, and then I will define a new media query. Let me just copy this and modify. And to determine the value at which we want to change, let me just keep reducing the width until I think around 650. That's a good place for us to switch. Or let me see, I think we can still go a little further. Okay, at 590 we can switch from displaying it in a flat version to the tall version. So I'm going to set the breaking point here at 590 pixels, and oh sorry, this is supposed to appear under the flat card section, because we are defining the behavior of the flat cards on smaller screen sizes. So if we arrive at this screen size, let me just copy all of them. If we arrive at this screen size, we want to display our flex, we want to set our flex direction to column once again, so that we can be displaying it in a flat card version, which is more mobile responsive. When we do that, we are just going to set the height back to 480 pixels, because that's the height we had for the vertical card. Then the other parts are basically the image part is going to remain the same. We are just going to set the padding to 20 pixels for the post info section. So back to our browser, we refresh, and now we have our flat card. And if you reduce the screen further, you see that this is responsive. Okay, and that is all for the design of our flat card. So this is how we are going to be using it. Wherever we want a flat card, we'll just make sure this class of flat card is added to the post card. And if you want a vertical card, we'll simply remove this and we'll achieve our vertical card. So that brings us to the end of this video. See you in the next one.